This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1851, Moon Knight series review.
Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Ian Levesine.
I'm Kevin Moyer.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Matt.
I'm Shane Kelly.
And I'm Chris Eberly with 80 shoulder pads.
Groovy, baby, groovy.
I'm grooving on that theme.
Would anybody like to go hang out at the mall?
You can borrow my pocket protector.
Oh man! Now I'm just trying to think of how many different jobs the pimply faced geek has had on The Simpsons over the years.
74. I have no idea.
Welcome one and all to the show. The six-man crew is at it again here tonight for another important review that we've been waiting on here. As Kevin wearing the appropriate garb as we get into Moon Knight. And what color is that costume? We'll get into that and more.
Oh, Christ. I need a six-pack for this six-pack.
I did fill up before the show.
Nice. Well done. I'm drinking agua because this weekend I'm sure is going to be filled with plenty of alcohol. But depending on how the show goes, I might have to run in the other room and get some.
Grab the reserves.
Exactly.
And I, of course, have a childlike beverage.
But of course, of the orange persuasion.
Indeed.
This episode is once again brought to you by Mr. Sean Wheatley, Left Coast Love himself. And his Whatnot Bundle Rumble, as he likes to call it. Bundle Rumble over at whatnot.com. As this episode releases, you'll have just enough time to be a part of his May 21st Bundle Rumble, taking place at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. However, the one directly after that is 6 days later on the 27th. That one is a late night one, 9 p.m. Pacific or midnight the next day on the 28th if you are Eastern like me. So stay up late and enjoy. Whatnot is a pretty cool website where you get to bid on auctions for goods, in this case comic books, usually about 2 or 3 minutes long. And then whoever wins, and you move on to the next product. And it's a great way for Sean to get his reader copies of comics out there into the wild and get it into the hands of new and interesting folks. So please do check out the link that will be in the show notes to check out those next two auctions. And you can search Left Coast Love on Whatnot as well to get further information on everything Sean is bringing to the table. And we thank him very much for his continued sponsorship of Comic Geek Speak.
Thank you, sir.
Indubitably.
Indeed. Yep.
Indeed.
And speaking of sponsors, we thank you, the listeners. Finger guns, pew, pew,
Pew, pew, pew.
over at patreon.com/Comic Geek Speak. Your continued support of the show keeps the lights on here. And don't sweat it if you can't donate. It's just as important for you to spread the word, either to friends or people who may be in the comic books, and let them know about the show and keep the spirit of comic book conversation rolling one way or the other. But patreon.com/Comic Geek Speak for that. And last but not least, go to Libsyn.com. Use the promo code CGS free to get 2 months free if you want to start podcasting yourself. There needs to be more podcasts out there for us to listen to, because clearly there are not enough hours a day. Libsyn.com, use CGS free to get those 2 months free. That's it. Moon Knight time. Right as we get the first trailer for the She-Hulk series released, for those of you who have caught that, that's going to be happening in August, I believe.
Yes.
Yes. And before that is Ms. Marvel. But Moon Knight came out, all 6 episodes of it, and we're here to discuss it. And you know what? I'll start with Chris for this one, just for variety's sake.
Honored.
Chris, initial thoughts on the 6-episode epic known only as Moon Knight.
Okay, so 2 things going in. I only have very basic knowledge of Moon Knight. It's one of the holes in my Marvel knowledge. Like I've only read like a handful of Moon Knight stories in my reading career. I mean, I know the character's basic history, but our august friends Kevin and Matt are far more knowledgeable. I look forward to their opinions. The other thing is, because they chose one of my favorite actors to play the lead, I was really excited for this show.
Sure.
And what I would say initially is this. I thought it was a great Oscar Isaac vehicle because he, again, demonstrated to us that he is an absolutely outstanding actor.
Sure.
To create 2 totally different personas in one show that are completely distinct from each other. Yeah. That aside, I think my feelings about the show are mixed. And again, part of it's I'm not as knowledgeable as I should be. I was questioning, is this really that faithful to Moon Knight, or is it trying to kind of put together different aspects of Moon Knight's history into one sort of hodgepodge? Yeah. Again, I look forward to other people talking about that. The last thing I'll say before we get into it further is that the show, for me, I felt, and maybe this is just in keeping with the fact that we're dealing with these multiple personalities, it's kind of all over the place when I was watching it. But when it got to the 5th episode, I was like, wow, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And I thought when they got to the 5th episode and you saw, these 2 great actors going toe to toe in those therapy scenes, I really started to enjoy the show thoroughly at that point.
Got it. I'll save our Moon Knight scholars for last, and I'll roll to everyone else before then. Mr. Murdo, thoughts and opinions on Moon Knight?
Like Mr. Eberly, my feelings are also fairly mixed, and honestly tending a bit towards the negative. I mean, you could almost turn my initial thoughts on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness inside out, where I said that was a movie that had a couple of bad bones in it, but altogether, but there was some appealing flesh hung on those bones. This one, I think it's more that there's a few good bones in here, and most of the rest of it was kind of rotting a bit. It really. I might know a little more about Moon Knight than you, Chris, because I was following the Moon Knight series that was being published in the early 90s, which is also not the best representation of the character. But from what I do know about the character, there were a few flashes of what feels like true, like the retelling, the flashback to his origin, when he's crawling to the
that was right from the book. Yep.
After the massacre of the archaeologist and his crew by the mercenary Bushman, right, for whom Spectre was working, and he just prostrates himself in front of the statue of Khonshu. That was the seed from which a somewhat better interpretation of Moon Knight should have sprouted. Instead, they went in a few other directions simultaneously than what I would have thought would have been the ideal take on the character. I mean, I think it could have used a little more pulp and mystery and a little less supernatural silliness. And you all know what a fan of supernatural silliness I am. So when I tell you that a particular project needed less of it, please do believe me. It's one of the great things about the character was always kind of in the early days at least, was the ambiguity of the patronage of Khonshu. Does Mark Spector really have supernatural moon powers? Is he really the beneficiary of an ancient Egyptian moon god? How much of that is actual supernatural phenomena, and how much of it is just all in his head?
Sure.
This story does not leave quite that much to the imagination, because by the 6th episode, we have 100-foot-tall Egyptian gods dancing the turnbuckle tango on the outskirts of Cairo. We've got Moon Knight's love interest turning into the Scarlet Scarab and flying around, and there's a hippopotamus-headed goddess in there. And
yep.
Yeah, it's a couple of the things that the filmmakers did I thought were at least interesting. I mean, I agree that the scenes in the asylum, or what appeared to be the asylum, it was an interesting wrench to throw into the works at that point in the story. I thought that the things that were set in Egypt, despite having not really been filmed in Egypt, they looked great. I thought that Jonas Harrow, played by Ethan Hawke, was an interesting character, if not the most appropriate antagonist, perhaps, or main antagonist, at least for this story. I think he needed to be a little more dynamic. He was just kind of an old, tired-looking guy with a cane shuffling around and mumbling about how Khonshu did him wrong, Yeah, and then of course there's Oscar Isaac. There were a couple of great performances in this, which are also redeeming factors. Oscar Isaac is a great actor, as Chris is always at pains to remind us, and he did a great job bringing to life the several different characters in one character that he had to bring to the screen here. And there were some other good performances besides that, the aforementioned Mr. Hawk, and I really enjoyed the voice of F. Murray Abraham as
Oh,
Comet.
tremendous actor.
Again, I would have preferred if that voice had just been heard in Mark and the other personalities' heads, as opposed to, being this giant bird skull head guy, making everyone uncomfortable. Yeah, the play between the personalities, it got kind of sticky pretty fast, honestly. That's one thing that was an initial misgiving of mine that did not decrease with time. They leaned way too hard into the alternate personalities angle, which was not even a part of the character as originally conceived by its creators.
Sure.
Stephen Grant, Jake Lockley, etc. They were just disguises that Mark Spector would assume to further his mission of crime fighting and investigation and whatever. They weren't alternate personalities, but that just somehow in the course of the character's history in the comics snowballed into dissociative identity disorder. And that is the angle that just about every writer who's touched the character for the last couple of decades can't seem to tear themselves away from. They're just fascinated by that angle, which is not an indigenous part of the character, and now somehow he's become the dissociative identity avenger. And I really wish that they had not gone in that direction in this story. I don't think. I mean, it made for some interesting play. It gave Oscar Isaac a chance to play against himself, which showed off his skills all the more. But I don't think it did the greatest service to the character here in this program. So generally, I just think it needed to be a little more grounded, and maybe a little bit darker and pulpier. But at its best, it was at least mildly interesting and exciting. There were some action scenes that were, action in the mighty Marvel multimedia manner. But at its worst, it got a little bit inane, if not outright silly. And it did kind of try my patience sometimes, especially towards the end where, as I said, things just went all cuckoo bananas. Egyptian god Cairo a go-go,
Now that you said it, I can't help but imagine a comic book called Dissociative Identity Avengers, starring like Moon Knight, Hank Pym, get all the Scarlet Witch, get all the get all the Avengers together that have had problems over the years with their mental capacities, and just see how crazy you can get.
And then wait for the mental health profession to come down on you. And
exactly. Yes. Yes, definitely. Oh man. All right. So I'll throw my thoughts out there. So I've kind of been waiting for a series that was similar to the Netflix series, as in one that wasn't already dealing with established characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because that's what we got with the Netflix shows. We got Daredevil for the first time. We got Jessica Jones for the first time. We got, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and so on. And that's what Moon Knight presented here. And I appreciate it for that. I really do. That it's, something entirely new that can stand on its own. You really hadn't had to see other Marvel Cinematic Universe properties to enjoy this show. And I give it merit for that. I really do. I would describe this series almost as like if Legion and Shazam had a baby. The FX show Legion was very much about mental illness and also, what's real and what's not real, and the main character dealing with it as much as possible while not trying to fall into himself in the process. And then there's Shazam with all the, the many gods of Shazam running around, some in his own head, some not in his own head, and, combining together into a transformation into a superhero. And that's kind of what we get here. We get both. I think for the most part, it worked for me. I actually really enjoyed this series more than I was expecting to, because honestly, going into it, I had no idea what I was going to get. Part of me wishes we gotten at least a little bit more integration into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but at the same time, considering they only had Oscar Isaac signed for these 6 episodes, They could very easily sign him for more. All it takes is a large check delivered to his door, and that will happen. But they didn't know whether they were going to get him for movies after this, or even say a season 2, even though they very much do set up for one. And yes, obviously spoilers for this episode if you haven't figured that out by now. But yeah, I enjoyed myself a lot. And again, coming from a Moon Knight novice, I don't know a lot of Moon Knight. I've read a little bit here and there. I mean, you guys know from the comic talk, I just started reading Jeff Lemire's run, and I'm enjoying that. But old school Moon Knight and I are not that familiar with each other, and I'm going to have to correct that. But I enjoyed it for the most part. It has its flaws, certainly. We'll get into that, but it was a good time. Shane?
I feel very similar to most of you. I don't know a whole lot about the history. I only started reading some Moon Knight with the 2000 and forward series, and not everything either, just some of it here, some of it there. Loved Oscar Isaac's performance, as was stated before many times. I enjoyed the show. I thought it was fun and entertaining. I did get a little bit frustrated in the middle. So I really liked the first 2 episodes. I really enjoyed the last 2 episodes. The middle 2, not so much. But it wasn't terrible. I mean, I still sat there and watched it and enjoyed it and looked forward to the next episode. I don't know that I care whether it is or is not in the Marvel universe. I liked that there was nothing linking it there right now. Do I want to see Moon Knight later? Sure. But for this series, it was fun to just not have to worry about any of that, and you could just watch it and enjoy it. In the first 2 episodes, I really did enjoy the change between personalities. I do think that got a little tired as time went on, but I really enjoyed episode 5 for the performance and everything tied to that, and very little actual Moon Knight in that episode at all. I don't think he showed up at all. So I really appreciated that. It was a departure from the previous episodes, self-contained, but moved the story along. And I like the effects when they would change certain times to not knowing what was going on. And now you're like, oh, well, that would be kind of what it would feel like in his head to all of a sudden wake up or realize he's somewhere and not really know where, and be very jarring at first. I just thought they did that fairly well throughout the series. I did not like exactly everything in the last episode. Like, I was not buying the whole big monstrous gods battling each other. That was a little bit too much the way they were portraying it, but it is what it is. But I am really curious to hear Matt and Kevin's take on it. One other thing I will say, I was not in any way, shape, or form a fan of the way the costume came on him, like it would Ragman from DC Comics.
Right.
Like wrappings just popping up out of nowhere. I didn't buy that at all. That irritated the hell out of me.
Sailor Moon Knight.
So, but I did enjoy it overall. I would like to see a second season or Moon Knight come later into movies or whatever, but I did enjoy it for what it's worth. But it's not the best of the world, but it certainly isn't the worst I've ever seen.
Fair enough. All right, here we go. The moment you've all been waiting for. Mr. Kevin Moyer, the floor is yours.
I actually think he should go last. He's the number 1 fan.
Well, there you go then. Then
All right,
Matt,
go ahead.
yeah.
I think Doug Munch has said you are the number 1 fan. Charlie Houston confirmed, so I think you should be
You're right.
the final. I'll
Final Jeopardy.
try not to get too much that you and I have conversed back and forth, but
Yeah.
so I feel as though the reality was, as soon as I heard they were doing the series, I knew it was not going to be what I wanted it to be, and I did everything I could to set that aside. And watching the series, I felt as though basically the key people in the show kind of each had their own agendas that they were working for. They came on board for a specific reason, to have kind of a specific mark in this in this genre. So I kind of feel as though they each had a little bit of an agenda, and my concern was always from the very beginning is because rather than address why Moon Knight is not Marvel's Batman and play up the differences about it, that they were going to do a show that tried to separate itself from that idea that this is Marvel's Batman, that we were ultimately not going to get Moon Knight either. And I feel there's a lot of times this is basically remind me of not to the same degree of quality, but Halle Berry's Catwoman, where it was a name only. So we got something with names we're familiar with, but there's a lot of aspects we're like, well, that's not, they're just making stuff up. I'm not a big fan of the DID that they've tried to crowbar into this character, saying that it was always there, because if Mark was in the company, the CIA, so he's used to cover IDs. If you watch show I always come back to is Burn Notice, there's an episode where a burnt spy, Michael Weston, advised that you have to be able to, when you have a cover ID, commit to it. So if you ever have to come back, you have to remember how you walked, how you combed your hair, how you act, how you spoke. And that's what I realized that Stephen Grant and Mark and Jake Lockley were. They were just cover IDs, that he was so committed, not because he had some type of mental disorder, that he was so committed to those that he could just flow into those. And there was examples in the books where Marlene would be talking to him and he's like, no, I'm Jake now. And that's how you're supposed to introduce, as opposed to being a completely separate identity who had no idea basically who the other identities were at the time. So it was a difficult series for me to watch. And again, it gave me exactly what I thought. They were going to separate itself so much from the idea this is Marvel's Batman that they were going to give us something that wasn't really even Moon Knight. So, Kev, you're up.
Well, I mean, I don't really know a lot about this character, and
except for everything.
I mean, I approach this as I've learned to approach other projects and entertainment aspects of other characters in any universe, but I've learned to go in without high expectations, and this character, especially from what Marvel has taught me in the publication side for the decades now, is I don't get my hopes up at all in regards to new relaunches again and again and again and again. However, I still went into this with an open mind. I mean, ultimately, seeing some of the trailers and the things that were presented before the show actually aired, I clearly see, obviously, that we were not, going to get the conventional Moon Knight. But I was curious to see what they would do with it. I mean, ultimately, the reason why I got into the character initially was because, I had a fascination with the moon. I love Egyptian culture and I loved superheroes. So, lo and behold, when I saw that first issue on the newsstand, and I was like, wait a minute, moon, a superhero, a vigilante, and it's based in Egyptian mythology. Oh, this is really cool. That's what sucked me in. So I found that those aspects were going to be involved in this show, and so I was hopeful. I was hopeful that things would be portrayed well. And again, I'm not a fan of the DID. I think it's so heavy-handed, it actually undermines any iteration of the character. Some have excelled with it. Lemire did a great job with it. Warren Ellis even. But it's just not a big aspect of the character that I enjoy. So I went into it. I started watching the episodes. I actually found myself becoming rather enthused about it, and it very akin to me after the first publication run ended, and they started with the next run, which was the Fist of Khonshu, which only lasted 6 issues. I was into that as well, because I was like, oh, cool. At least we got Moon Knight. We got, there are more Egyptian themology and stuff. And I was like, oh, let's see, So I kind of felt that this was a very similar experience to what it was back in the mid 80s for me in the publication side. And I was enjoying it. The third episode dipped for me. The first 2 episodes I was very into. Third episode dipped for me. Fourth episode renewed my enthusiasm for it. And actually, by the end of that episode, I was more enthused because I was like, wow, this could go so many ways. And I was so hopeful it went, in in at least a similar direction of where I would have liked it to have gone. It presented itself that it had that opportunity. And I loved Oscar Isaac's performances. And I liked what they attempted. I clearly see that they did not focus on one iteration of the character. They actually pulled elements from each run into this. So you'll find, you know, from the Munch run, you'll find the Fist of Khonshu, Lemire, Ellis, you know, pretty much everybody except for, you know, the only thing I didn't really associate was a Chuck Dixon or even Charlie Houston, to be honest with you. So I was like, okay, well, they're trying to create this new version. Like, instead of, because everything's so convoluted, let's try to create our own version here in the MCU. And that's how I kind of feel the approach was with this character. But I kind of felt as the show went on, I was watching more of an Oscar Isaac focus of a show about DID with a little bit of superhero mixed in. You know, it seemed like Moon Knight was, you know, always not an afterthought, but just not a prominent character in a show called Moon Knight. So that in itself obviously loses, you know, air for me. And then I, you know, unfortunately, I know, Chris, you said 5 and 6 were the best episodes for you. That actually turned out to be the worst episodes for me. I agree with Adam, because the whole changing of personalities became too sticky, and it really got super sticky at the end, where he was literally in the middle of, you know, a fight or something, like consciously changing personalities, and then, oh, let's do this. Oh, I'm going to go to this. Stephen, you do this. And Mark, and I was like, that just is like, no. You know, that is, and I don't even think that's even medically, you know, they were trying to be so respectful to DID. I don't even think that's even realistic DID. So I kind of feel that they fell short on their mark in their attempt to try to, you know, support the reality of DID, and obviously pay respect to it and be respectful to the those that are suffered by it. But I had literally thought that by the time the 4th episode had ended, that I really started believing that everything you were seeing in regards to Moon Knight and everything that was pertaining to Steve and Mark might have been all in Mark's head. Like, you know, some of those things actually happened, but you're seeing it the way he saw it. You know, you're seeing it through his eyes. And when I saw the whole mental asylum thing come in, and I was like, oh, okay, this can actually kind of steer in another direction now. This could have been a whole, not a complete mislead, because I think that would have been, you know, disheartening and a big letdown, a huge disappointment to basically throw away 4 episodes and say like, this didn't actually happen. But I thought you could have kind of build on that and actually change direction, and ended up, you know, giving a more truer interpretation of the character. And obviously we didn't get it. It actually got more far-fetched and more ridiculous. And for me, it just ended up being an utter disappointment. And I say that with respect. There's aspects I liked about it. I mean, I love, you know, I love the archaeology. I love the Indiana Jones aspect. I mean, I know they touted this as a, you know, an Indiana Jones and cripes, I can't even think of the movie now. With
The Mummy.
No, Tyler Durden, you know, with Brad Pitt and
Fight Club.
Fight Club, yes. Yeah, there was like, oh, this is Fight Club meets Indiana Jones. And I was like, all right, well, you know, I like both of those movies. So if they can kind of, you know, work along those parameters and actually amalgamate this character into that and do a cool, you know, journey, I'm into it. And I was for a period of time. But yeah, it lost me at the end, and I honestly, and I say this with all respect, because I'm not trying to just be, you know, a diehard. I did approach this with a very open mind, and sure, I wanted to succeed regardless if I like it or not. And unfortunately, at the end, I didn't like it. I liked it less, and I honestly, I don't really have an interest to see anything going forward unless they would, you know, alter some things and be less heavy-handed with a lot of things. But I don't see that happening. You know, I try to keep a pulse on what how people were responding to each episode and try to see, and it was all over the place. And that to me is exactly how this show was, all over the place. And it never came to a culmination for me. It never, Arthur Harrow, I felt, was kind of a throwaway villain. It literally just didn't really come across to me as an interesting villain, an interesting character. And I kind of, I guess, started expecting he would be somebody else, again, maybe try to build you one direction and then, turn and hear and go like, oh, wow. Oh, that was cool. And it's just never happened.
Well,
Kevin, go ahead. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I'm just glad that we had a show where not once did I have to hear anybody say that's secretly Mephisto. Because that's the one I'd say that probably the most positive thing about this is that not once did I say to myself that villain is possibly the devil. So that's where I was going with that. Can continue, Chris. What were we going to say?
Well, I was going to say, to kind of echo part of Kevin's sentiment, is that I was hoping I thought one of the most powerful parts of the show was when Layla realized he was present for the murder of her father.
Right.
Yeah.
And when he mentioned Bushman, I was like, oh, because that's the originating villain of Moon Knight. So I thought if we could get the tattoo face and the whole, like, you could have a great combat scene and all of that. And they just mentioned that's it. He never comes back to be mentioned or obviously seen.
Right.
And I was just hoping they would. So I read a couple of the Monks and Kevich run for the 80s. I know as a class, I've only read part of it, but I was hoping like that, or is it Midnight? Is it the other villain?
Midnight Man.
Midnight Man. Like
Yeah.
I'm a big Ethan Hawke fan. I'm always happy when I see him act, but I did find that villain deeply underwhelming.
Yes.
And I was hoping that, considering how powerful Moon Knight is, and let me tell you, when he first appears as Moon Knight, I thought that was thrilling. When he's like beating the crap out of that.
Yeah.
And you just see the back of him, and you see the cowl and the cloak, and I was like, wow, like that looks awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
And there wasn't enough of that in the show.
Yeah.
So that's just to kind of piggyback a part of what Kevin was saying.
Well, and the thing that, and I agree with you, and I like that they included all those aspects. I love the Easter eggs. I like that, like I said, they tried to include as much of each run, and try to appease everyone. I kind of feel, in essence, instead of trying to focus on one. And I had thought that, as you learned about their Mark and Steven, and by the time episode 4 came and went, and that's why I really got enthused, because I got to the point where I thought you had heard that basically Steven had mentioned that he had it under control for the last couple of months, and I was thinking, like, I started, piecing this all together, and I was like, and they mentioned about, the whole archaeological scene and, referenced, the Bushman and him with the origin. And I was like, so this kind of could make sense that maybe because, he was part of Bushman's crew and they killed Layla's father, and obviously they had a relationship, and I thought maybe this was the brink. Maybe this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Mark's psyche broke, that moment. And he created Steven as a way to try to cope with, everything that had built up to that point. But that was the straw that broke the camel's back, proverbial, and I thought that would be very interesting, and that would be very, again, akin to, dissociative disorder and identity disorder, pardon me. And I thought that'd be kind of cool that you could kind of explore that aspect then, and he could start, the 5th episode would be him kind of opening up, and you'd learn more about that. And then you'd see more of an amalgamation, the healing of these personalities, and then start working congruently. But it just, like I said, they still kept focusing and made that more outlandish, where he was literally consciously switching, identities. And that to me is when I was like, you really lost my interest at that point.
Well, it was funny too that I thought the direction that we were going to wind up going, especially after finding out, who Stephen Grant was, that Stephen Grant is quite literally the Indiana Jones character.
Yeah.
And frankly, I want to see more references to Stephen Grant in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I want to see like posters for the latest Stephen Grant movie, like up in the background in an upcoming Marvel movie or something like that. But learning that the coping mechanism that Stephen was, and then them hinting at the fact that hey, losing Steven in the desert, and may very well be, what Mark needed in order to perhaps heal and move forward.
That's where I thought they were going to go with.
That's
I
what I
was
thought
disappointed
too.
they didn't, because I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I wanted to be whole, so now he can be Moon Knight.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
Yeah, because definitely mentioning that, yes, this did not have a lot of Moon Knight in comparison to other series with superhero action.
No, and,
Well,
and they never really, I felt, disclosed or narrowed down how long the Steven persona has been around.
It
You know,
was
so
it was
that's-
since he was a kid.
Since he was a
from what-
kid.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I know they went that way eventually when they went back to the whole backstory, and
Mhm.
the whole death of Randall and the whole, that whole thing. But I was, I'm saying up until that point, I was literally going like, wow, so this identity may have only been around for a couple of months, and that was something
Yeah.
that was befitting. And I thought, this could really actually take off into something. And I thought that would be something befitting of, since they were so respectful and so concerned about, utilizing DID and doing it respectfully, that I thought, well, maybe you could show that, that there's an aspect to heal, that this is a possibility to heal, and you can overcome from this. And that's a build of a character and a journey of a character. And even, their way of going about it was to, amalgamate these, identities that they could consciously aware of each other and switch back and forth. But
Right. Are you
When
just
you're saying about the not seeing too much of Moon Knight, and that kind of goes into how I felt like this seemed like a passion piece type of thing with agendas. Like, I feel Oscar Isaac signed on because this would give him a chance to kind of show his acting ability. So I don't think he was as much interested in doing a comic book genre movie as much as, hey, this is a character that allowed me to give different personalities at the same time. I think is it Calamay, who played Layla, she went in kind of wanting to give this Egyptian superhero, have an Egyptian superhero that she could represent and kind of put that out there in the world. I think the director, or one of the directors, Mohammed, wanted to highlight the other aspects of Egypt that just in movies are never seen. And Ethan Hawke, I think, just because there's, and again, I understand people can change their mind. He's been on record saying that he wouldn't do a comic book movie. I think this was a way for him to do a comic book movie without actually doing a comic book movie type of thing. So at no point did it really feel like it was a comic genre. I shouldn't say at no point, but it really didn't feel like a comic genre series, as Chris, I believe you said earlier. It felt like just kind of a project about DID that just happened to be inserted into with a comic book character dressing in the front.
See, it's funny that you put it that way in particular, because I go back to my Netflix comparison. I go back to, the Netflix series Daredevil and stuff like that, where in some ways you could almost say the same thing about some of those series. Once you go into I'd say maybe Iron Fist and Luke Cage, it might be a little bit less so, but Daredevil and Jessica Jones, you don't need comic book knowledge to really get those shows. So I mean, there's basic concepts going on. Kind of the most comic book suspension of belief would be the powers that Matt Murdock has. That he winds up with the chemicals getting the senses and abilities that he has. Otherwise, it's about a blind lawyer basically coming to terms with his life. That's what that show is more than anything else. And here with Moon Knight, as you said, Matt, it's a vehicle of an individual trying to come to terms with his DID and possibly some other aspects of himself, but certainly the least marvelly of the Marvel Disney Plus shows that we've gotten so far. For good and for bad, honestly, in my opinion.
And Ian, I would say to that, I think the one contrast though between Jessica Jones and Daredevil and this is that, I mean, I agree with everything you said, but those two shows were completely faithful to the spirit of those characters.
Absolutely, yes.
Like to a T, essentially. And this, like I said, I think was just, again, as to echo Kevin's point, was just all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, and frankly, like it's for 6 episodes. They need it, and again, I enjoyed it, and possibly even more so than some other people on this call. But I will say that it did need a more coherent narrative. It didn't seem to find its voice until about halfway through, and which is a shame, because it's not that I don't enjoy the first couple of episodes. It's that I didn't understand what direction we were going to until we actually got the basic idea of where Ethan Hawke's villain was coming in. The fact that he was looking to get the power for himself, the fact that he was trying to commune with the gods, and basically get all this power built into his existence, and freeing a god, and all this and that. All that came in like the last 3 episodes. When you have 6 episodes to work with, it's hard to deal with that. It's rushing, and that's that.
You're right. It did suffer because of that. Because I remember, after the 5th episode, which was basically just about Mark and Steven, and learning, that was basically all that whole entire episode was. And I'm thinking, after that episode was over, I'm like, wow, we have one more episode
to wrap everything up.
And then they are announcing that this was the record-breaking final episode of any Marvel show, that it was actually the lowest running time of any final episode of a Marvel series.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, holy hell, you got so much stuff to address,
and
you had the least amount of time to do it. And and I was thinking, wow, you really kind of blew it. You did not pace this out. You cut it short. You didn't give it the air it needed. I mean, I know we discussed many a time with the Netflix shows. Some of the shows work great with 13 episodes.
Yeah.
Some of those shows didn't need to be 13 episodes.
Yes.
So I felt that this could have been at least 2 episodes longer. You could have got to really enjoy the character more, and you could have really flushed it out, and you could have really taken it for a nice ride. Instead, everything was focused on the DID. And now let's put all this shit in the last episode, and I'm just like, and it reminded me of the Charlie Houston run. Like, they built up that whole thing between him and Taskmaster, and it was like, oh, you finally got to the 6th issue, and you're gonna have this classic battle between these 2 characters, and it was 2 pages long. And it was like such a letdown, And I felt that's how I felt watching this. It was like, this should have been more than 6 episodes.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that determination occurred, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, She-Hulk is more episodes.
I think I just saw that it was 6.
Oh, is it 6?
Is it really only 6? Okay, all right.
Last I heard it's going to be 6. They probably need to save some money for the CGI fix.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, because I had started reading, and I thought I had read that She-Hulk was one that was going to be more than 6 episodes. So, taken.
Well, you know what? I'm looking up specifically to see if I can get episode number for. Yeah, Ms. Marvel is 6 episodes, and let's see if She-Hulk is more or less than that. Looking here, 9 episodes.
Yeah, see, it's 9 episodes.
Oh, we'll be okay. Right.
Yep.
Well, that's why I'm like, why did you,
But
So,
and like was said before, I really feel like when we got to the 5th episode, I thought losing Steven in the desert was going to be it, and you would get Mark healed and be able to flesh that out a little bit in the last episode, and cut down on some of that crashing togetherness of everything trying to culminate in that last episode.
Or frankly, get Jake for more than a after credits.
Okay, so I'll talk about that in a second. So I really didn't like how he could control going back and forth between personalities, because what I liked about the first 2 episodes was he couldn't control it.
Right.
And it was a complete disarray, mystery to Steven what was going on. I enjoyed the explanation of Steven. I thought by the 6th episode, based on the 5th episode, he would have been done, and we would have just gotten Mark, and Mark might have been a little bit more vengeful because of that, because of losing Steven, but it would have brought him together and focused a little bit more. The last episode, the extra credit one, I really thought that was kind of forced in there, like an afterthought.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was there, but I really think it was something that they'd like, why don't we stick this at the end? And then they just filmed it. I'm like, okay.
Well, not only that, I've as much as I enjoyed the 5th episode, the sixth episode, I share a lot of your sentiments. Like the Egyptian gods, like watching like bad like stop motion from like the 1970s or something. It was ridiculous. But
especially when they matched up perfectly
Yeah.
with what was happening on the streets.
yeah, but the oh god, the hippo. But the ending. Let's talk about that. So what really puzzled me was, okay, if they've come to like terms, why is he still like tying himself up with that leash like in bed now? Can't they talk to each other? Like I didn't understand like where they were going with the way that show ended. It just seemed to undercut everything that had been achieved by the characters up to that point.
Truthfully, it goes with what kind of what we were saying. I felt like everything the first 4 episodes was building up to that special highlighting the DID coming to grips with the mental disorder, episode 5, and they're like, oh, we got one more episode. I guess we got to wrap up everything else. I felt like everything was supposed to lead up to the 5th episode, and then the 6th was just kind of, well, this is the stuff that's left. This was the Danny DeVito and Twins crap left over that we just got to quick wrap this up with. That's why it was only 44 minutes, because they didn't really put much time into it. That wasn't really the focus of what the series was supposed to be about.
Well, and if this is the last we ever see of Moon Knight, which I somehow doubt it is, because this is Marvel we're talking about here. I think, like I said when I was talking about it to begin with, I think they'll find the money to give to Oscar Isaac to make him do this role again.
Take into consideration, he was also the executive producer of this.
And it's also true. That's a very good point. Yes.
So, this is his baby. This is something. I give him props. He is a comic fan.
Oh, yeah.
So he enjoys, obviously, this genre.
Didn't he write a comic at one point?
Yeah, just recently something was out there I saw.
Yeah. I think if not a Kickstarter project, it was something along those lines, yeah.
He's not only the actor, he's the executive producer. So, obviously there's a business behind it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that presents itself, I believe, in a positive light, that it's, more feasible that way, because he's investing more in this than just his paycheck and acting abilities.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and in a perfect world, you'd always like to think that these actors, especially in this day and age, are doing it because they enjoy some aspect of the genre and the story, and in part are doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be a little hurtful to think that it's just about the money, but it is a business.
Right.
They are getting paid to do something, albeit I think most of them outrageously paid for doing something. But that's the way it is.
You can usually tell, too, when an actor is actually enjoying the role and when an actor is doing it for the payola, And I didn't. Not once did I think that about Oscar Isaac.
No, I didn't either. No way. His performance was astounding.
It was great.
It was about it.
And that's where
I was as well. I think she did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Oh, certainly.
Well.
Yeah.
But that's where I don't like thinking, well, they just have to give them enough money to do a second run. I'm not sure that that's the cause of it. I think it's more time and where the character's direction would want to go.
Yeah.
See how people took to this, and if they really liked it, it'll be a lot easier. If they don't like it as much, it might be a little harder, but they might do it a little bit later down the road than what they initially expected to.
I'm just more focusing on the fact that you hint at the third personality for what felt like 3 episodes, and you hint at it, you end it. It's over. The credits are running. Yeah. And that's when you get the third personality, and you don't even know if you're ever going to get more.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, take into consideration everything that's been said so far. If everything was so convoluted and all over the place, and you want to introduce another character into there yet, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's where, like
that
you
would have
said,
made
Kevin,
everything that much more unenjoyable,
yeah,
more complex, and less direction than you already had.
And that's where you needed the extra 2 or so episodes in the run.
Do we have a sense of how, because obviously many people I'm sure watch this because they like MCU, but they don't know anything about Moon Knight, the comic. So do you have any sense of how general audiences have reacted to the show?
Go ahead. But I would say the 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, says that, clearly it was a critical darling. But I'll check the Metacritic score as Matt chimes in here with what he has to say here. Go ahead.
Sure. So, I do a lot of podcast listening and stuff like that, and both on iTunes and then also on YouTube. And a lot of the people that I kind of watch or listen to, they were raving about it. It was more about Oscar Isaac and his performance than I would say the actual show.
Yeah.
And I had just commented that I didn't care. You know, I didn't find the series that enjoyable. I'm not a big fan of the idea, and I got peppered with, why are you hating the show? What are your reasons for this? And then I just say, this, and kind of just go in there, this is the version of the character that I liked at the beginning, and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, how can you hate a show with no good reason? I was like, well, let me circle back to where I actually gave reasons.
Yeah.
I didn't say that I hated the show. I just didn't care for it. And I didn't say that it was crap or that you shouldn't watch it or anything like that. I just voiced, but I saw more people coming forward saying how much they loved it, but it was more about the performances than the actual series itself. So it would make sense that if it's the critics loved it, well, that's why. Again, that's kind of goes into I think this was kind of a passion project,
certainly,
to highlight Oscar Isaac. And I'm not taking away from him, he did a job.
You're still way better off, Matt, than any of those guys on the internet who, after seeing the She-Hulk trailer, was like, "Oh, great, there's a female Hulk now."
For about 40 years now, guys.
Exactly. Where have you been?
I heard a theory, and I know we don't want to get on that tangent. I heard a theory that I'm hoping doesn't happen with regard to that series.
Yeah.
That they're going to Captain Marvel her, where she didn't get her powers from Bruce. It was always part of their DNA. And I'm like, so you couldn't have it where a guy gave some power to somebody else. So, I mean, not to go down a tangent, but that was a theory that I saw floating out there. It's like, please don't let that be. It doesn't have to be exactly faithful, but don't.
Yeah, that would even work.
I don't think that's gonna happen, but we shall see. Yeah,
we're not gonna get our blood transfusion.
I want our blood transfusion. If I got it in the '90s animated series, I need to get it in.
Yeah. I think it's hard, like what Matt was talking about with going on forums or posting about things. We can sit here and have a civil discussion with us, our friends. We might have 15 people in a room at times talking about this stuff, and we can have a civil discussion, still disagree, but enjoy what we're talking about without hating each other over it. The larger world doesn't seem to be able to grasp that concept anymore. And the minute you say, well, it wasn't what I was hoping for, they're down on you for hating it, when you would not even have said that. It's just you would have preferred something else. Yeah. But boom, you're a hater, and why are you? No, I just would have rather it gone in a different direction. But
Shay, you live in the United States, right?
So I know I'm in the 2020s in the Yeah.
One person said, I don't know how you can not love this series. And my response was, well, take how you feel. Think of the opposite. And that's how you can see how I don't love the series.
And frankly, like, I'm of the mind, we've all said this tons of times before. Like, if you can back up your opinion, if you can give us specific, reasoning as to why you feel the way you do, awesome. Like, that's fine. Everybody has their own thoughts and opinions on literally everything. Yeah. Just don't give me it sucked. Why? Because and end it there. Like, give me some backup. That's all I need.
Even if I wouldn't agree with your reasons, they're still your reasons and valid. It's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's.
It's not just about opinion either. I mean, you're premising your displeasure with the show because the iteration of the character you enjoyed is not being represented there.
Yes, that's very true.
Like it's something you're making up and just saying like this iteration sucks.
Right.
This is the iteration I read and I really enjoyed this, and I don't see anything of that aspect of that character in this show.
Yeah.
So I'm not enjoying it. But I mean, I was watching a lot of them. I mean, and you see this is all the frenzy. It's been with the comics as well, is that, oh, it's so brutal. We can't wait. This is going to be the most brutal Marvel show. And, and I didn't see that it was any more brutal than Punisher or Daredevil.
I was going to say, they haven't seen the Punisher then, my God.
But I mean, the fans were like, that's what they wanted, this is going to be so brutal. I can't wait to see how brutal it is. And like, that's what you like about the character. That's what you think is a, redeeming quality of a character.
Yeah.
But that is the predominant fan base of Moon Knight, unfortunately. That is just what has been integrated, and those kind of aspects of that character have been embellished upon, and these fans are eating it up. It's like, I want that. I want that. And do you want that really? You know,
Well, let me ask the two
it's
the
short-sighted.
biggest fans.
I mean, I think it's very short-sighted for a character to, if that's the only thing you're enjoying about it.
Yeah, then you would like any brutal
Exactly.
character. You
Yeah,
don't
then
like.
go watch something else because you can find that
Yeah.
anywhere. You know?
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
What did you guys think of the costumes?
You mean Mark's magic mummy wraps?
Yes.
Yeah,
You
I
mean the
think
crotch
Shane nails
dangler?
it. Moon Knight is not Ragman. Just nuts.
Yeah. No.
The Mr. Knight costume I thought was
Well, that I
perfect.
like.
that was
yeah,
that was
the suit.
pitch
The suit
perfect.
was great.
That was
Right
pitch
out of the
perfect.
comics,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but and honestly, pretty much everything else about the show, costume wise, I enjoyed. I like the look of Khonshu and the weird, like levitating, skull head. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool. I actually really appreciate the Marvel character we've all been waiting to see portrayed. Okay, maybe not, but at the same time, I'm glad she exists. What is it, Scarlet Scarab?
I love that. I love that costume. That's
It's
the
Oh,
best
yeah.
costume in the show, as far as I'm
It looks
concerned.
really good.
Excellent.
It looks
You
great.
know, I mean, first of all, if you weren't going to do Marlene, I wish they wouldn't have taken her origin to create this character. So I didn't like that amalgam type of thing. I'm not taking away from, as I said earlier, that her kind of agenda was coming in here and give it an Egyptian superhero. But one of the things that irritated me was, so suddenly Moon Knight or Mark couldn't take on Harrow at the end, that they needed to team up to take him down. So that was another thing, that they introduced her, and I understand for the ceremony to lock in Ahmet into Harrow's body to contain it. But up until that point, when she's still out fighting Khonshu, Moon Knight needed her to help him fight her. I don't buy that.
I mean, to be fair, he was still recovering from a bullet wound, even if there was some miraculous healing there. So you could throw that into the mix if you want to.
He didn't look like he needed help when he was flying across the sky and then need Harrow in the face.
Well, I mean, in that essence, you can go back to, I think it was episode 4 where he fought the Anton Mogart's crew, and they impaled him with like 4 different spears.
Yeah.
And he's still fighting. Okay, now you're gonna say he can't fight because he has a bullet wound. I mean, I kind of,
it is a bit selective. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Well, and I just think that's, I think again, it's an agenda, and that's how it comes across to me, is that they wanted to bring this character in and give her spotlight, which they did, and I'm grateful they did, because, like I said, I actually think she's a cool looking character, and I think it's befitting. If you can create a cool character, and she's she's Egyptian descent and all that, hey, I'm all for it.
I really do appreciate, over everything Marvel has done from Iron Man to this, they make costumes that look like they would work okay in the real world, and they look like they're superhero costumes. They're not overly simplified. They're not always stealthy unless it's called for, like Winter Soldier. That looked great and made sense why it was looking the way it was. But I like that they find a way to make them look good.
Yes.
Without looking
Great
fake.
point. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
what? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to bring up one more thing, since I did bring up the hippo earlier.
I like the hippo.
I am telling you this, that when in that last scene of, what was it, episode 4, where they open the doors and then hello, immediately I'm on the floor laughing hysterically, being like, okay,
but and that was
strangely awesome.
That was a very Doctor Who-ish kind of vibe for me too.
Yes.
For something crazy coming in out of nowhere, the last second of an episode.
Yeah. That's actually a shockingly good comparison to what we got, Shane.
Yeah, that is, to be honest, you say that. I mean, this end of that scene actually gave me more hope. This is another thing that fed into that hope, because the deity that she represents is about healing, and again, I thought, okay, so you're going to see, this is where things are going to go. You're going to start a healing of this character and these personalities, and and I was excited, and she was entertaining, and it was a great inclusion, and that's why I say aspects like that I enjoyed. I mean, I enjoyed them for what they were. So
I meant to ask the resident Moon Knightologist here, because I didn't know this for sure. Can Moon Knight actually fly?
No.
Okay, I thought so.
And they actually talked about that I think there was an interview, they were discussing it, and actually he didn't fly in that last
Yeah.
episode.
Glided.
And he glided, and Khonshu was providing jettison for him to be able to go that far.
And I think they actually did kind of make that clear enough to me in the arc of the episode that he was, basically giving him a boost essentially to get him over there. Because not once did I see like a Superman, fist in front, like propelling occurring in that. So there's.
I got to go back to Shane's point though, because it was right on the money, and it echoes. And he captured what I hadn't fully formed my own thoughts, is that Steven should have stayed dead, like that.
Yeah.
And because I'm thinking back when Mark Spector first appears in that bathroom mirror, and he's really intimidating. He's like, Steven, let me come in and take care of this. I'm like, oh, there's Moon Knight. Right.
Yeah.
And then he's like wailing on that creature. And I wanted more of that. Like I wanted them to get to that point where that's who it is. Yeah. And that's where I think the show, or I have the most mixed feelings about the show.
And I can appreciate what caused that personality to come out when he was a kid. But
absolutely.
I appreciated the way they explained it in that 5th episode. And again, I really thought part of that healing process was you lose Steven, you kind of grieve over it briefly, but on the other side, you come through and realize, okay, you're better because of what happened, because of Steven, but you can now be more whole and move forward to do what you have to do.
Exactly. That's how I interpreted it, and that's kind of how I was hoping it would go, because obviously he's not Steven, he's Mark Spector. So Steven is another identity. So that would be part of the healing process, and that would be, and I tied it back to the first episode when he's talking to that girl in the museum, and he's talking about, getting through the field of reeds and being accepted. And, I was like, oh, and here's Steven now in the field of reeds. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I thought that would be all full circle. You get the healing of the character, you get to see more Mark, you get to see more Moon Knight, and that's how the show, culminates. And I was like, wow.
And that Steven came to sacrifice himself for Mark.
Right. Yeah. And also, I mean, while the show didn't 100% say this, when we were seeing the flashbacks, when we were getting the history of Mark and also essentially the history of Steven, it's implied that, or at least it was to me, that Steven came back out when the mother died.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I'm saying I don't think Steven had been out for. He
hadn't been. No, they established. Like, I think Mark mentions at one point that until lately he had Steven under wraps, basically.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and that coping mechanism then returned when he needed it most.
Right, and that's why I kind of tied it into when Bushman killed Layla's father, and I was like, oh, that would totally make sense. That would cause him to break again. It would cause him to lean on that personality as a crutch, to get through that traumatic experience.
And that doesn't mean that you couldn't still have that third personality come out the way that did at the end of the episode, because that just means that there's some other aspect of Mark that's broken that we didn't see much of yet.
Well, the biggest issue I have with that is the fact that basically they implied and finalized by the end of the show is that the times when he would black out and then wake up and everybody was laying there dead, that was basically now presented to Jake. That's the Jake personality.
Yeah.
Which to me,
even though you thought it was Mark.
Yeah, to me, that completely, I guess, it really doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't fit the character, because you're saying the most brutal aspect of this character is not the mercenary.
It's the cab driver?
It's the cab driver. Yeah. So that's like, and the only thing I can say is, like, if you want to actually argue that DID wise, is the fact that he's compartmentalizing, persona. Like, basically that's his mercenary past, and he's compartmentalizing that in the Jake Lockley persona. So I can see there's an argument for it. However, for me, it takes away from the character, because I don't see as the mercenary being, not the most, I don't want to say brutal, because I hate to, go along those lines, but to be that most dangerous character, to be the most dangerous aspect of that character.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't like that end credit scene, because to me that cemented that aspect that, oh, so Jake's the murderer, personality, and that's acceptable for him, and that to me just undermines the whole character. And again, it undermines the whole healing process.
Yeah.
It's like, you've now made it worse. It's kind of like, again, I can go back to Charlie Houston's run where he's like, the first 6 issues was the bottom. He hit rock bottom and he came back. And then you're thinking, oh, great, he's, coming out again, coming from the ashes and rising again as this great Marvel hero. And next thing you know, he's carving, crescents in people's foreheads and, carving their faces off. And I'm like, you completely went in the opposite direction. You're going, backwards, and I'm just like, you just kind of undermined everything.
Kevin, in the comic lore, is the origin about his parents, is that a part of the comic, or do they create that for the show?
No, that was for the show. Basically the mother had died very young, which led to his relationship with his father. And he was a problem child. His father was a rabbi, so he was always being that overbearing, trying to control his son, trying to help him, trying to push him into, being, possibly a rabbi himself. And of course, that just did not sit well with Mark. And that's why Mark ended up running away, basically running away from home, joining the Marines, became a boxer, which his father didn't like that aspect of it because, again, of the brutality and all that stuff. So that was not befitting of, a member of the family. And then it was just too much. And then when Mark joined the Marines and was in the Marines and then became a mercenary. So his mother was never really an aspect of the origin or the character other than just in a history note, more or less.
I just asked that because I thought those scenes, again, because of the strength of the acting, were so affecting.
Yeah.
Again, he's a great actor. I mean, you really felt the terror and the pain of that experience.
Oh, sure.
And the mother was horrifying. I mean, because she was so broken by her grief.
Yeah.
And then she's basically like putting all that on her son and blaming him for the death of his brother. That was powerful
heavy
stuff.
That's heavy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although the one thing Oscar Isaac is not, I just have to throw this out there, is he's not Jewish.
No.
In real life, he is not Jewish. However, I've had enough non-Jews play Jews in Hollywood that as long as you can pull it off and you get the spirit of it, then I'm more than okay with that. And I feel like he definitely did get the spirit of this very Jewish character enough for me to have a non-Jew get a go at it. So that I just got to throw that as the Jew on the show. So anyway,
The Jew on the show.
The resident Drew.
Exactly.
Come on, Ian. Without Jews, there's no comics.
Amen.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Two things. One, I feel as though they had to make Lockley. I forget who wrote it. I think he was a musician, but when they brought back the old numbering of a Moon Knight series recently, within the last maybe 5 years, I think that because Mark wound up having a baby with.
Oh yeah, you're talking about
Jake has a baby with Marlene that Mark and Steven didn't know about.
Yeah,
I think that's where you first got to see that Lockley was like this bruiser, and I wonder if they had to elevate him because other than he's just a cab driver, so they almost gave it the Robert De Niro type of feel to it, which I don't agree with, but I was just trying to figure out is that what they were coming from.
Yeah.
The other thing is I would have liked if at some point, because he was raised Jewish, how to kind of have the conflicting ideologies between an Egyptian being kind of driven by an Egyptian god, but at the same time being Jewish. How that would kind of mesh, how they would butt heads, and kind of that kind of conflict.
Yeah, polytheism versus monotheism.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing that I can say to that is, and I can only, ache back to the first run is, whereas Mark wasn't all that vested into being in his religion, so as a character, you saw that correlation with his father being a rabbi, and it was to me, it was kind of an overbearing situation for him. So that created less interest for him. So I don't think I never got the feeling that, even though, yes, he's obviously Jewish, but I never got the feeling that he's vested in the religion. So I would not expect there to be a huge conflict of interest that way, because I never understood Mark to be very vested into the organized religion.
I don't think there would be an issue of Moon Knight devoted entirely to his bar mitzvah the way that there was an issue entirely to his bar mitzvah. Like he's not that far into Judaism. I do agree with that entirely.
Yeah.
Is he, as Julian Edelman said, Jew-ish?
Nice.
Now, something that I appreciate about most cinema TV shows these days is the effort they put into some of the credits, opening and ending.
Yes.
I really appreciated in this one because it was driving me crazy throughout the first few episodes. In the beginning credits, they had the staircase, and you're wondering what? I'm wondering, what does the staircase have to do? You haven't seen it. It's not in his apartment. What is going on? Why is this such a big focus in the credits? And then finally you get to episode 5 when they're doing the flashbacks and you see where he's running up and down these staircases trying to see what's going on in the different rooms of the house that really was Mark's house growing up. I just really appreciated that being in there from the beginning and getting a payoff for it in episode 5 finally.
Yeah, and they even had done things like, you know, the when they showed that image with the moon over each episode, that moon became fuller.
Yep.
You know, so they started doing things like that, and they showed the tomb, and yeah, it was great visually. I mean, visually it was fantastic, and they obviously built upon that, and there was reasoning behind using those images, including like the face, you know, the segmentation of the face, and then the 3 personalities, you know.
Yeah, I just really appreciate the effort that goes into that and then get the payoff throughout the show.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
There's a YouTube channel. Now they have a couple different shows that they do, and I don't watch all of them. The only one that I watch is they do like not a behind the scenes, but they look for all the Easter eggs and try to connect all the dots. Is New Rock Stars, and stuff like this. I'll be able to watch, and then they'll start saying, okay, look at this in the background, and how this could relate to this over here, and they were kind of following in the opening and closing how the moon was changing the phases with each episode, and just trying to correlate what happened in the episode with regard to the credits and vice versa. So that's, if you have some time, sometimes those episodes are pretty good when you break down shows or movies.
Welcome back to New Rock Stars.
That's it.
New Rock Stars. Actually, wow. Yeah, they break down everything. Just even looking at it here, because their most recent one is She-Hulk trailer breakdown from the looks of it. So yeah, check that out at, I guess, youtube.com/New Rock Stars, I think is their full URL.
Levinstein, producer on the spot.
I will say one of the deep cuts, and I don't think they got to it, but I picked it up right away, was it episode 4 where they're in the in Alexander the Great's tomb, and Mark picks up a weapon to fight, and it was very reminiscent from the Fist of Khonshu series, where he was using a couple different old weapons that were gifted to him, and one of them was like a hatchet. So I remember he was saying I could probably use as, I think he, in one issue he tied a line to it and used it as like a grapple.
Yeah.
But it was what Mark picked up from the tomb looked almost exactly like that weapon from that series, and I thought that was a nice little throwback nod to that.
Yeah, but speaking of weapons too, I thought that the Half Moon throwing stars were excellent. Like that was
Crescent darts, you bastard.
Pardon moi. All right, Mr. La-ti-da, Mr. I know things about Moon Knight. They were. I think they did a great job with those. They great visual and also, you know, having them, you know, strapped to him in different places and what have you, easily accessible was a nice addition.
And that second combat scene in the city where they have like his cape like against the moon. Yeah. I thought the visuals there were fantastic. I just wanted more. I wanted more of that, basically.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep. But hey, he was gray. Okay. So, or silver, you know, whichever way you want to put it. They didn't really go for a white look necessarily for the Moon Knight character. So, you know, that was a choice.
Maybe they wanted a contrast with the Moon Knight in the suit. I don't know.
Well, that's what I think. I think they wanted to make sure that there was some differential between Mr. Knight and Moon Knight.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, which obviously they spent a lot of detail in doing the personas and all that. You know, they wanted to make sure there was distinctive characteristics between the look, the sound, and the feel of these characters. You know?
The glowing eyes are not part of the comic character, correct?
That was added. That was just an element that was added back in the Charlie Houston run, where Frank D'Armata just was coloring and decided to make the eyes like glowing blue, and that had been an aspect of the character prior to that.
Think
And
of
there was no other
how many
rationale.
different characters just have glowing eyes for the sake of glowing eyes, like in comic book. So that's
Something that was never addressed, never mentioned, never, nothing. It was just visual effect is all it was, artist interpretation.
Yeah, it's hard for me to sleep when my glowing eyes come out.
Oh, shame.
So there was an article on the direct.com that I'll draw people to as well, that where they had an interview with one of the executive producers of the show, Jeremy Slater, where they went over villains that almost were the villains of the show.
Yeah.
They mentioned Bushman. They said that they decided not to go with Bushman because there would be too much comparison to Killmonger. And they felt that they were too similar characters to have that be the first one out of the gate. They want to avoid that.
I think that's crap. But anyway, go ahead.
I know. And they also considered Stained Glass Scarlet and Zodiac as two potential characters, and they don't they throw it out there that if there is more Moon Knight, either one of these could easily show up in future seasons. But
Stained Glass Scarlet would be a wonderful inclusion. I wouldn't want her to use that character and not give her air to you for the viewers to enjoy it. I wouldn't want her to be a throwaway character.
Sure.
And Zodiac, I think, is actually in the latest comic run right now. That would have been kind of cool to actually, have some correlation that way too, to tie it into the actual publication.
Yep.
But
Murd, what was your pick for best villain again? Going back to Moon Knight, maybe perhaps one that we can look forward to. The other hand of Khonshu.
Oh, right, from the best of awards. Hunter's Moon.
Thank you. Yes. Yep. So,
Other Fist of Khonshu.
Yes. all things we could potentially look forward to maybe seeing if there is further Moon Knight down the road, one way or the other.
So, speaking of Khonshu, how do we react to seeing Khonshu portrayed in the show that way?
I enjoyed it for the most part. I think that it was a striking visual, and I think that using him almost as the Egon, as the, come on, Mark, you're not going to give up now, are you? That was a good way of going about things.
I liked it visually. The first one was fine when you first see it, but I got tired of the floating head as the series went on.
Yeah, I think he needed to be less of a visual presence. But sure, we get to have F. Murray Abraham's voice in his head.
Oh yeah,
that
was spectacular.
F. Murray Abraham is the voice of it, and I agree. To me, again, I'm more of the tone that I feel that visual is only in Mark's head. That it's not a visual everybody sees. So I would have liked, if they would have kept it to just occasionally that he would see it. But I would have like Adam said, I would have enjoyed it more if it was more of a audio thing than a constant visual thing, and especially at the end when it was so prominent.
And also, like with a good horror movie, because there are elements of that in the opening early episodes where he sees like flashes of him in the street, and then you don't. And when he's in that bathroom and the creature's chasing him, I thought it was really effective horror. Essentially,
me too.
They were being sparing with the creature being shown.
And they had some good direction. They started out well. It just kind of went pear-shaped, unfortunately.
Well, I do actually side on it may have worked a little bit better if it was just Mark that was seeing Khonshu or hearing Khonshu, as opposed to Khonshu being this actual present god that could be seen by other people. And that whole like other vessels of gods plot line, like kind of really didn't go anywhere. Now that the more that I think about it, like they
were all killed.
Yeah.
Well,
but there was
I do like
how too. I mean, according to the standards, since Harrow was supposedly representing Amit was imprisoned, so that means he shouldn't have even been able to be in that, that court scene, if you want to call it that or whatever, the trial or whatever, So there's things like that just kind of don't,
Well, if I remember correctly, that wasn't at the time. Khonshu and was accusing Harrow of doing that, and Harrow basically said, "No, I'm not." And then the other guys were like, "Okay, he's not doing it."
Yeah.
without like there was like no proof or anything like that. They just took his word for it as he's not trying to bring back Amit.
Mhm.
He said he's not, so clearly he's not doing it.
No, he's good. Put you in a vessel.
Yeah.
Well, if let's say they do a second season, what would you guys like to see in that? Like, what direction do you think the show should take?
Not a clue at this point.
More than one scene of Jake, please. That would be great.
A little bit. If the story calls for it, don't be afraid to be a little bit longer. Don't shorten it and squish everything into the end to be resolved. Give it some more breathing room throughout the series.
I'm gonna go with again. If the original Munch run reminds me of The Shadow, I would like to see them pull from that type of feeling of setup. Now, again, they're not going to be, even if they would. So I'm not. So when we first saw previews for this, I was thinking, well, it seemed like they were going to use the Fist of Khonshu series as like the backbone, especially when you find out the villain was Harrow. And then it just seemed to go way off of that. But so if they still wanted to put those elements that I'm not overly fond of into the series, I do kind of think, but maybe pulling down because you figure what was going on that wouldn't get the attention of the Avengers. I understand to some extent, anything can get the attention of the Avengers. Where were they when Cap and Sam were taking on the Hydra in the Winter Soldier? But it just seems like all of a sudden these people are rapidly dying in Egypt, and like nobody teleports in, flies in, or anything.
There's giant gods fighting over the city.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd like to kind of see it maybe brought down. It doesn't necessarily have to be in New York, where it was set, but kind of maybe go a little bit more towards the Munch initial run, Sienkiewicz, which some of the podcasters and YouTubers need to learn how to pronounce his last name. But Sienkiewicz,
He got a hospital mention at least.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, but I've heard people butcher his last name when they were talking about the episode. As kind of the backbone, and then if you want to add those little other elements to kind of fall in with this, go ahead. But that's kind of where I'd like to. If they did another season,
damn it, I want Frenchie.
Yes.
Well, we saw his name in Mark's cell phone at one point.
Yeah.
So he's out there. Just to get back quickly for a moment to the love interest angle here. The introduction of Layla El Fuli as opposed to Marlene Alron. I've complained frequently in the past about how these projects have a tendency to just treat the love interest characters as arbitrary and just fold, spindle, and mutilate them in all kinds of different ways. I've always contended it would be better to just create a different character rather than just try to squeeze the existing character into a new mold.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was kind of glad that they didn't go with Marlene and try to turn Marlene into something she wasn't. They just introduced a completely new character to represent the Egyptian nationality, and just cleverly, I thought, tied her into the legacy of a different Marvel character, the Scarlet Scarab, who was introduced by Roy Thomas back in the Invaders series of the 70s as a national hero for Egypt. That said, though, that means that Marlene Alron, as we know her from the comics, is still on the table. And so, getting to things that we might see in a future volume of Moon Knight, I think it would be cool to introduce Marlene as a love interest for Stephen and see what complications emerge from him trying to start a relationship with Marlene while he's sharing a body with a man who's married to another woman.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, you would have to change her origin then, unless Mark happened to meet two people that Bushman killed their father on an Egyptian dig.
She could still be the daughter of Dr. Peter Alron. It's just that maybe Dr. Peter Alron wasn't murdered at that same dig.
It's a possibility. Yeah. Well, or at the same time, I mean, look, if I got to endure a Batman the Animated Series where they gave Tim Drake Jason Todd's origin, I think. Yeah. I think we can definitely figure something else out here that would make sense for the character, even if we do have to change a couple of things, and then have them be introduced. As long as it's a character that makes sense in the overall run of it, and as Murd is saying, is not a throwaway or a butchering of said character, then you could change the origins a little bit.
I think and the fact that they included basically the origin and backstory of Marlene into Layla, and made her the love interest for Mark. I thought, introducing this character, that way you could still incorporate those ideals of these other characters, supporting cast and whatnot, and still have that in the show. I actually thought it was more befitting with Layla, since she herself is a mercenary, because in the Munch-Sienkiewicz run, Marlene would go along with Mark, and she was an adventurer herself, and could throw down as far as fighting and things like that. Well, to me, that makes more sense that that he would have a romantic love interest with another mercenary, so then she would have those qualities, and you could carry that along into future iterations of if that transpires. So I'm not really all that upset about Layla, that she is Layla. I just think that there's enough there that assimilates Marlene, and obviously you have the backstory, so you didn't lose that. And I think it gains the aspect that she can run alongside of him and go along with the adventures, not Avengers. So I think it's kind of befitting in a way. I didn't feel like I lost anything too much.
I was thinking, what if they would have done something similar? I'm trying to think how I would have felt if they would have kept Layla a separate character and not have her father get killed by Bushman, but have Marlene's father but rather than Mark. So basically Layla and Frenchie, they were mercenaries together within Bushman's crew. So you could still, and I'm not saying that they would have to make Marlene eventually the love interest, but you could still have, Marlene's aspect in there, but it not be Layla, but you would still be able to incorporate Layla. You get the best of both worlds. So he was dating someone who he was a mercenary with at the time. For whatever reason, who knows what she was doing when this happened to Marlene's father, and that Bushman shot Mark, and then he dragged himself to the temple. So that you could still have an independent character without merging it with another established character, almost to kind of diversify the character.
I mean, I see what you're saying. Again, but I think as somebody who was a showrunner like Jeremy Slater and the writers on the show, it seems to make more sense to incorporate those values and backstory, and to because they're obviously, like you said, there's an agenda to create a female Egyptian character. They wanted that element in there, and obviously with the Scarlet Scarab. So I think that was all their way, just with Moon Knight, is to take elements and then put it into a character. So I think that's their way of taking, here's Marlene, here's the backstory, here's the love interest, and then have, here's this Egyptian female superhero that we'd like to implement as well. And that kind of all works together, so I just think that's kind of their realistic approach to how they, included her into the show, rather than try to let's do both.
I am glad they went with this route, as opposed to, I guess, one of the original early ideas was to have his girlfriend be Echo.
Ooh,
and then
yes,
coming right off of Hawkeye, would have felt like they were really trying to crowbar that character in there.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, I think in Bendis's Avenger run, where it was focusing just on Moon Knight, because all.
Oh,
you lose him in mid-thought.
We lost him mid-sentence.
Well, you can put a quarter in the phone machine.
I know, right? Well, while we wait for him to get back, just building upon the Egyptian aspect of it all, I will point out. And now here's Matt yet again. So I will couch that and let him continue what he was saying. Matt, you're back.
Oh yeah. So with you talk about Bendis and I lose my my Zoom. That's what he was kind of doing with that. But I think in that series he meets up with Echo and they kind of have a moment or two. So I could kind of see where they pulled that from. Yeah. I would have just felt as though she would have been crowbarred into another series just to kind of spotlight her leading up to her spinoff. If this series would have gone with that route.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. And I think that if we were to do more Moon Knight down the road, that's when you can start introducing existing, Marvel characters, whether it be her, whether it be, heck, even Shang-Chi might be a cool character to interact with.
Oh, I'd love to see that. Oh, yeah.
Or Blade.
Or Blade, yeah, any of those characters. What I was going to bring up was on the Egyptian part of it. 4 out of 6 of these episodes were directed by a Egyptian filmmaker. which is good to see. They were directed by Mohammed Diab, and I think that overall the directing of the series was pretty solid. I think that it was a very visually interesting,
Absolutely.
well shot series overall. Even the fight scenes were pretty easy to follow. There weren't a lot of like those annoying like jump cuts where you see one angle, then you see another, then you see another, then you see another, and you can't follow anything. I think they did a good job in general of keeping the pacing just right.
And Ian, where were the desert scenes shot?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think Jordan is
Okay.
correct on that. Yeah.
Stone Harbor.
Behind the Christmas barn.
Right.
I also can, coming off of my trip to London, I love that he was working at what was clearly the British Museum, and the British Museum itself is such a visually stunning structure that anytime you see it, you just get lost in it, and it's such a beautiful place. Like if you ever get a chance to visit it, it's one of my favorite museums in general, and great visual aspect of including that in the show as well.
I did like how, I forget what they're called. They're like a barcode type of thing. Is it QVR, something like that?
QR code.
That you could scan it and it would take you to Werewolf by Night 32. I think it took you to 33. I think there was another issue that took you to Tomb of Dracula or something as well.
Yeah.
I did like how they snuck those in there as well, and that's kind of taking the Easter egg thing to the next level.
I missed those.
What was
Yeah,
funny
me too.
What was funny too is that it was reflected. So if you did the non-reflected version, you would get one comic, but if you scan the reflected comic version, you got a different comic. So that was a pretty.
Where was that at?
That was in one of the British Museum scenes. I think
it's also in the storage facility that I'm in. I think at one of it might have been his locker.
Yeah,
I think there's 3 or 4 of them.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah, and they're all readable on Marvel Unlimited. They're basically free Marvel Unlimited copies that you can load up and check out important Moon Knight issues.
I'd love to see Moon Knight battle old Jack Russell. Come on, it'd be great. The werewolf.
Well, there's a Halloween special coming up with Werewolf by Night this year, I believe.
Is there really?
It's a Halloween.
That's what I heard. So that would be a good place for him to pop up.
It's just one. I don't know. I don't even want to say an episode. I don't know. They haven't really stated how.
Really?
It's
Interesting.
a Halloween special with Werewolf by Night. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I don't even know if it's going to be Jack Russell though. To be honest with you.
Interesting.
If he's got green pants and a big 70s belt, I'll be happy.
But like you said about the QR codes, when the one was Tomb of Dracula issue 10, which is the first appearance of Blade, which that's why I was like, oh, so this could actually, go into that realm with Werewolf by Night and Blade, and this could be, and nothing ever happened to it, and I was just like, damn, another lost opportunity.
Well, we know that they're going to have Blade working with the Black Knight, so they could definitely bring in all these street characters and the supernatural. That'd be really fun. There's
also rumors flying that we may very well get a giant-sized Man-Thing appearance in Werewolf by Night. That may be our first man.
They do have a parental control now.
Yes, indeed.
Not that terrible direct-to-DVD movie they did some years
ago. No, not.
I never actually watched that. But.
It was. My favorite thing about it is you knew it was bad when they were talking theatrical release and then they weren't. Like,
so you've actually watched that then?
No, I've seen bits and pieces of it. I can't.
I know there was. I only remember the opening scene where I think he saw some boobage because 2 people were starting to get it on in a boat, and then like Man-Thing I think kills them.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember seeing it years ago and just going, "What the hell is this?"
Sci-Fi Channel, baby. That's what that is.
Yes.
Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh, I used to love when they'd run the marathons of those really bad Marvel movies on Sci-Fi.
One of the post-credit rumors that I heard was going to be out there was that Gore, the God Butcher, was going to kill Khonshu at the end in a post-credit scene to get us ready for Thor: Love and Thunder. But then I also heard maybe there's a chance Gore comes to Earth in that movie and takes care of some gods, including Khonshu.
That's possible.
So that would be
interesting.
I mean, if he does, great. If he doesn't, also great. You know.
I love when you do.
Well, because
whatever.
part of me feels like there's integration, and then there's like going a step further than integration. I don't know if we necessarily have to see Khonshu again so soon after this, in Thor: Love and Thunder, but we'll see.
Give me some cosmic entities. Give me the in-betweener. Come on, give me the living
go
tribunal.
Lord
Yeah.
Chaos and Master Order.
There you go. Hey, we did have the living tribunal at least hinted at.
Yeah, that's right.
In that
True.
Doctor Strange scene. So
Well, I didn't know if we were doing spoilers here. Ian.
hey, that's a throw out. No, it has nothing to do with the movie whatsoever. So that's
How do you know? The
Now I just
director's
lost
cut might have
followers.
more.
all right. Any other things we want to bring up in the course of the series here, or is that about it?
I would just say I hope they return to this, because I would like to see because I just love the actor so much, but I'd like to see them do more with Moon Knight. I just hope they give us more Moon Knight.
Yes, I do agree.
And I agree with Matt. I'd love to see the shadow version of the character, because that's
Yeah, I'd like to see a more refined version of it, and instead of this all over the place stuff. I think if they kind of rein it in and just have those elements. I agree with Adam. That's always been something I enjoyed since the first iteration, is that it was always very ambiguous, and I like that aspect. And Munch was an expert about like bringing it to your attention at the least moment you wouldn't expect it. So it was like he kind of got used to it being just more vigilante street level thing, and all of a sudden, oh, there's an element. Could it be? Could it be Khonshu? Because I love that. I thought that was so superbly done. So I mean, obviously, again, I accept the fact that we most likely will never receive that iteration, but I hope we can get something close to that and refine this down. I just, you've made it too complex and too all over the place, and I think if you can kind of contain it a bit and make it more refined, I think it'd be more enjoyable, and then I would be open to seeing more.
And don't show off the Ragman effect either. That would be
Can't
handy.
need that either.
Let me say this though, this discussion in the show makes you really want to go back, because I never read the full
No,
80s
I
run, so I really
never
want to do
read
that.
Much
Only
of
read
that at
parts
all.
of it.
Yeah,
So.
I need to check that out as well. I mean, one of the many gaps in my reading.
And with the app, it's possible.
There you go. Also, another thing that I'll point out that they intentionally, I mean, I don't know whether they intentionally or not, but it certainly seemed to me they made it very ambiguous as to when this series was actually taking place in the Marvel.
Good point. Yeah.
Whether or not it happened during the blip, whether or not it happened, after that. I don't necessarily see any actual like dates or anything of the sort thrown out there. So maybe that's why we didn't see any Avengers, is that they were all still dust. That's it's certainly possible, because they
Is possible.
They just announced like I think yesterday that Secret Invasion is actually happening during the blip.
Yes.
Oh.
Oh,
You're right.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I read that too. Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Moon Knight happened every day all at once.
I did like the night effect where they move the skies back.
Yeah, I did too.
That was something that was interesting and visually very interesting to see.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Confuses the hell out of me about Secret Invasion happening during the blip, though, since we saw Nick Fury get dusted. So I don't know what's going on there.
Oh, that's right.
Well, somebody else was posing as Nick Fury in Far From Home.
Yeah, that was a scroll.
That's true. Yeah, maybe the scroll got dusted. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
it could have been scrolls that got dusted the entire time. Well, we shall see.
Just like Agatha all the way,
Mhm.
all along.
Indeed.
Yep.
All right, let's get our freckin' square, or other words. Let's get freckin' swears out there, gentlemen. Murd, what do you give it?
I gave it a 2.5.
Fair. Chris?
3.
Kevin?
2.5.
All right. Shane?
3.
Matt?
I'm a 2.
Ooh. I'll probably be the highest. I'll give it a solid 3. I think that it may even get higher than that on further ratings, perhaps a 3.25. But for now, it'll continue to be a 3 for me. It was a solid watch, and I enjoyed what I saw. So that's where I'll leave it. All right, gentlemen, this was excellent as always.
Oh yeah, wonderful.
And,
Well worth the wait.
indeed, and now
Good
we're caught up on things for now until like 2 weeks from now when we're no longer caught up. So that's the way viewing works. Because up next we got the Obi-Wan Kenobi show coming.
Yep.
We got Ms. Marvel. We got She-Hulk. It's Good time to be a nerd.
Ian,
Daredevil.
me and Chris have to talk Star Trek a little bit somewhere along the way.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
indeed. Yep. I'll certainly be caught up on Strange New Worlds by the next time we do our comic talk.
I'll make a point of that as well.
Cool.
Yep.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
then to add on to this, that they just announced today that the Disney Plus Daredevil show is moving forward.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
I saw that just
They have
before getting
writers
on.
and producers, so
Yep.
it's moving.
And
Awesome.
I kept telling people, like, until like Deadline or Hollywood Reporter actually reports something,
Yeah.
and you can't believe anything. And it was Deadline that broke the news.
Yeah.
So it's,
awesome.
Yep, it's 100% out there. We don't know anything about who's returning yet, though. So that's that
I think
remains.
Charlie Cox is.
I would hope so.
I would think so. Yeah. It'd be important to have Daredevil in your Daredevil.
I did see recently Kristen Ritter and Mike Colder were seen in a photograph.
Yeah, she took a
She
selfie
took
on.
a selfie recently, and that's stirring some rumors that will there be some type of a cameo in one of the upcoming shows
Okay.
where they just kind of came in for a day, like maybe on She-Hulk, Attorney at Law.
Well, the
Okay
other
with
thing
that.
is too, they are filming. They just started filming Echo,
That's
That's right. Yep.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
so
Okay.
you have that going on as well. So I think that's more probable. That's
Yeah.
my guess.
Yep.
But
Matt.
She-Hulk's already wrapped. That's post production.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that it's more appropriate that would probably be Echo.
I always wanted more Luke Cage because the second season of Luke Cage ended on such a cliffhanger, essentially.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that show.
Matt Corman and Chris Ord are going to be the executive producers. They're best known for Covert Affairs on USA, and they also worked on The Enemy Within and The Brave, and they'll be the executive producers behind the return of Daredevil.
Nice.
No word if Danny Rand's coming back. What was the actor's name? Finn?
Yeah, no word on anything as of yet.
No-
but
No campaign for him yet?
hey, I continue to say the way that second season ended, I was actually really looking forward to season 3.
I was irritated when I saw it was only like 8 or 10 episodes. It's like, wait a minute, there's got to be some more here. This is getting good.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm going to say again, I know some of you agree, that really wasn't the actor's fault, number one.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And two, that show got progressively better in the second season, especially because they were highlighting the Daughters of the Dragon so much.
Mhm.
And she, oh, Murd, what's the character's name? I just brain farting.
No, well, which character?
Not Misty Knight, the partner.
Oh, Colleen
Oh,
Wing.
really?
Colleen Wing, like I thought she was the best part of the show as it progressed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of that. Absolutely.
She purposely didn't take a role in Shang-Chi, hoping that maybe she can come back as Colleen. So I'd like to see her come back again. That's a series waiting to
I'd
go.
love it too. Yeah, I'd love it too. Yeah. Now that it's all out there and it's possible, yeah. I mean, get Colleen Wing in Shang-Chi too. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this was great. And well, before we wrap it all up, once again, a reminder: if you want to buy some comic books, I sure do know where you can go, and that is whatnot.com. Sean Wheatley's upcoming auctions are on May 21st at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and also on May 27th at 9 p.m. Pacific, otherwise known as midnight Eastern, the next day on the 28th. You can head over to whatnot.com to get the full features on that. And that'll be in the show notes as well. And once again, patreon.com/Comic Geek Speak for everybody else who has been continuing to donate to the show for quite some time now. You guys are excellent. But the rest of the stuff will be read by Shane, as is tradition.
And Chris gave up on us. For those watching, visit us at comicgeekspeak.com to send us an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. Let us know what you think of Moon Knight. Look us up on YouTube at youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Thanks to everyone who contributes to the episodes. Continue to send in Muddle the Murs. While we didn't have one now, one will be upcoming. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time. In the 80s. Chris came back in just to dance.
Yep.
J.J. Abrams' flare effect.
Nice timing.